Welcome to the MOOC course on Buddhist philosophy. Today's module is on the Buddha's social philosophy, a critique of the caste system and a move towards gender equality. The learning objective of this module is to make the student acquainted with the approaches to caste and gender equality in Buddhist literature. Buddhism is the name given to the creed taught by the one called the Buddha, the awakened one, who, according to late accounts of his life, was born as Siddhartha Gautam in the aristocratic Shakya clan. Biographical details, however sparse and fragmentary, are important. In the Buddha's case, his birth in a Kshatriya clan, his coming to adulthood in a republic or oligarchy situated in the eastern borderlands rather than in a monarchy of the central Indian regions, seem to have shaped not just his attitude towards Brahminical culture, but also provided an alternative roadmap for society that he set up in the form of a fourfold Sangha. The Buddha's teachings are remarkably responsive to the sufferings of beings in this world. Buddha also came to be revered in later Mahayana period as Bhaishajya Guru or the medicine Buddha because of his diagnosis of the human condition as suffering, his investigation of the cause of suffering, his reassurance regarding its removal, and his teaching of the path out of suffering. Like the true doctor, he urges his followers to maintain unwavering focus on the wound itself, the endless suffering of samsara, rather than engaging in futile speculation about metaphysical questions. One of the best illustrations of the rational and pragmatic spirit of Buddhism is the Kalama Sutta, where the Buddha urges the Kalamas not to accept something merely on the basis of tradition or hearsay or rumor, or even because of faith in the teacher himself. He asks them to use their own reason to determine a particular course of action. If something is known to lead to harm, it is to be abandoned. If something is known to lead to benefit, it is to be embraced. Thus, the Buddha rejected all forms of authority, including his own, by claiming that rational scrutiny is the only instrument for ascertaining the truth. In his time, society was divided into 4 varnas. These classes formed a hierarchy based on birth. The 4 varnas were said to have arisen from the limbs of God himself and therefore had divine sanction. The Buddha, in a rational critique of this social structure, struck at the very roots of this inequitable system. Of course, it has been a matter of debate whether the Buddha made the complete eradication of social disparities the basis and the goal of his religion. Buddhist suttas reveal, on the one hand, the Buddha's severe critique of Brahmanism, and on the other, his attempt to give new meaning to these old structures and thereby craft an inclusive Sangha. To examine Buddhist attitude to caste, let us begin with a discussion of the Madhura Sutta. The Madhura Sutta consists of a dialogue between King Madhura Avantiputta and Mahakachana. When the king asks Mahakachana about the Brahmin claims to superiority as being the best of castes, the latter counters these claims in 4 ways. Firstly, one's position in life is not determined by caste. A Brahmin can be both master and servant, depending on his wealth. And similarly, a Shudra's position is dictated solely by his wealth or the lack of it. Secondly, rewards or punishments in the afterlife are not determined by caste. They are the results of one's own actions, good or bad. Thirdly, the punishment for crimes committed depends not on caste but on the nature of the offence itself. Fourthly, anyone, irrespective of caste, who goes forth into homelessness and adopts the noble path of asceticism, moderation, and non-violence is equally revered. Mahakachana's reasoning reveals that there is no justification in this world or the next for any Brahminical claims of superiority whatsoever. A similar dismantling of claims of caste superiority is found in the Asalayana Sutta. Asalayana, a brilliant young Brahmin, is instigated by 500 other Brahmins to defeat the Buddha on his claims of purity of all four castes. The Buddha points out that Brahmin women give birth to their child in exactly the same manner as other women do, and still the Brahmins claim they are born from the mouth of Brahma. Taking the Vedic sanction for caste hierarchy head on, the Buddha proceeds to demonstrate through various examples how it is not lineage that differentiates one human being from another, but it is their actions. One of the most well-known of the Buddha's dialogues concerning caste is the Vasetha Sutta. The sutta begins with a dispute between two Brahmin students, Vasetha and Bharadwaj, concerning the question of how one becomes a Brahmin. While Bharadwaj reasons that only lineage and pure descent on both sides qualifies a person to become a Brahmin, Vasetha claims that it is ethics and actions that determine Brahmanhood. They take their dispute to the Buddha, who explains that the differences between species are defined by birth, whereas the differences between human beings are defined by convention. The key term here is convention. All the so-called differences that we see among people are just mere designation with no basis in reality whatsoever. They are social conventions rather than ontological existence. The Buddha goes on to say that a person could be known as a farmer, a trader, a bandit, a soldier, a sacrificer, or a priest, depending on the work they do. However, there is no such category as Brahmin which designates an occupation. If it has no grounding in conventional social roles, is Brahmanhood then defined through the mother or the womb? Rejecting hereditary claims, the Buddha carries out a radical reconstruction of the term Brahmin, linking it to deeds rather than birth. A similar recasting of the new teaching in older vessels is to be found in the Kutadanta Sutta, where the Vedic sacrifice involving the slaughter of hundreds of animals is reinterpreted and transformed by the Buddha into an internal sacrifice, consisting of disciplining the practitioner through the Buddhist path. If caste categories are artificial constructs, if wealth, position, etc. are not determined by caste, it follows that the fruit of the spiritual path is also not caste dependent. In the Kannakathala Sutta, where King Pasenadi asks the Buddha whether there is any difference between the four castes, the Buddha replies that of the four, the first two, that is, the Kshatriyas and the Brahmanas, are considered preeminent in the sense that people bow down to them with proper etiquette. But when it comes to the future life, what matters is not the caste of the practitioner, but the nature and intensity of his own exertion on the path. If the practice is right, there would be no difference in the liberation of one and the liberation of the other, whatever caste they might belong to. Caste, thus, is merely a social convention with no relevance for the cultivation of the path leading to liberation. However, in texts like the Ambattha Sutta, we find the Buddha seemingly taking sides with the Kshatriyas in their battle for supremacy with the Brahmanas. When the young Brahmin, Ambattha, fails to greet the Buddha with appropriate respect and instead proceeds to revile his clan as menials, the Buddha launches on a dialogue designed to prove that amongst those who follow lineage, the Kshatriyas are superior and the Brahmanas are inferior. He argues that the Kshatriyas are superior as they conform very strictly to caste purity. But he also points out that questions of lineage are relevant only when it comes to marriage, etc. When it comes to supreme knowledge, there is no place for pride of ancestry or clan. All that matters is accomplishment in knowledge and conduct. While Buddhist philosophy challenged social hierarchies based on the essentialist claims of Brahmanical religion, it did not go so far as to dismantle those hierarchies altogether. However, when the Buddha's formation of the Sangha as a morally, spiritually oriented ideal social order can be said to be a step towards the formation of a casteless society. In the Attakanipata Sutta of the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha declares that Varna and Jati have no place in his Sangha. Just as all rivers lose their individual names when they enter the ocean, and they are simply called the ocean. Similarly, all those who join his Sangha lose their earlier designations of family and caste and are known simply by the name of Buddhist monks.